Hi everyone, I'm Ava Schneider and I'm back with Dr. Emily Helder and my fellow research assistant Francie Bailey. Our last video we talked a lot about motivations for adoption, and now we're going to go into more about adequate adoption preparation. So I guess my first big question is generally, how does one prepare for adoption, and does preparation differ depending on the type of adoption that's happening?
Yeah, so it actually varies by state a little bit, the preparation. So each state has some guidelines and expectations for how many hours of training adoptive parents do. It hovers around 10 to 12 hours or so of training and preparation. A lot of that is focused on helping the parents understand the dynamics of adoption and preparing them for the possibility of challenges, just so they know kind of what to monitor and what they should do if those things occur, and just give some general, an overview of parenting and how to do that, because not everybody who is adopting has parented prior to that adoption. So some of it's just general parent training that's not necessarily specific to adoption. The other thing that happens as a preparation is the home study process. So parents are required to fill out, or through an interview process, a bunch of different questions about themselves, about their past relationships, if they're partnered, talking about their marriage or relationship with the person they're adopting with, those kind of things. So it encourages a lot of self-reflection. And then the social worker, usually from an agency, will come tour the home, meet with the family and really go through their answers. In addition, people have to submit references, and those references are interviewed to make sure that they're suitable. So there really is a involved process in preparing people, both in training and then also in the kind of home study interview process.
A lot of times it seems like adoption agencies can be unclear about the information that surrounds the child, and sometimes they can give blatantly false information. As a professional researcher in international adoption, how common is it, would you say, for adoption agencies to give this inaccurate or incomplete information about the child to the adoptive family?
It's fairly rare. I have a longitudinal study that I've been working with a set of families, and that's one of the questions that I ask them, and that less than about 5% of the time families are saying that they didn't get all the accurate information from the agency. And even in that 5%, it really varies as to why. So I would say it's even rarer for it to be a blatant, the agency knew and didn't say anything. The more common way that happens is the agency didn't know. Especially with international adoptions, there's not as much of a file necessarily for that child, where a lot of medical stuff or their past history is really unknown. So there's just a lot of unknowns that the agencies have to communicate. And then sometimes too, I've seen it where an agency has tried to communicate something to a family, but the family, for a variety of reasons, it hasn't really sunk in. They've heard it's kind of in one ear out the other, where the agency has tried to communicate stuff, but it just hasn't, the meaning of it hasn't really resonated for the family. So there's a variety of reasons why I think adoptive parents could feel like they don't have the full story, but it's pretty rare for it to be that the agency knew something and withheld that.
Okay. Do you think that it's gotten better as the years have progressed? Because I know my family, my parents explained when they were adopting my little brother that they were told stuff right when they got to the orphanage, and nothing prior. So is that kind of a new thing, that the communication's getting better?
Yeah, I would say so. I think especially with, with video technology and the ability to send videos. So more often I see families where, now in my career, families can get videos of kids in the orphanage. And so you can really, even prior to accepting a referral, you can tell the family more about, say, the child's developmental status and that kind of thing from the videos. Whereas earlier in my career, it was more photos that came, rather than videos. So yeah, I would say more stuff is coming in international adoptions. Mm-hmm.
Cool. In the Stauffer situation, they seem to attribute a lot of, the rehoming and the adoption dissolution as this being the case, the inaccurate information or the incomplete information. Is this excuse, do you think, justifiable as far as being a reason to, go through with adoption dissolution?
Yeah, it is a predictor. Like the research does say, like when families feel like they didn't have important information and that information came to light after the adoption, it is one risk factor for adoption dissolution. But rarely, if that's the only thing, rarely is that going to lead to adoption dissolution. So really it's often the accumulation of multiple risk factors. So I don't think it's probably, based on the research anyway, accurate to say like that's the only thing. It's really a confluence of factors probably.
Okay. And it sounds like they were given incomplete information to the extent of his special needs.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that some people simply cannot handle adopting children with special needs?
That I think it's a complicated question because, it's true. I think that some families are probably better prepared than others, maybe because of their own personal experiences with disability, either themselves or with their family, their own personality, their own attachment experiences of the parents, right? But that's sort of what a suitability or a home study is supposed to catch. Like that's kind of the main goal of that. So hopefully once a child is placed, that it's already been determined that family is suitable for that, if that process worked well. The other challenge I have, applying that idea to the Stauffer case in particular is that, if you think about bio children, you don't have a choice there either, right? So families who have biological children who have disabilities, that wasn't something like they didn't have those children because they were a better fit. It just happens, right? And so I think it's probably more helpful to think about it as, the family has to become a good fit, right? It's not necessarily something that they're good at right away, but it takes time and training and seeking out support and resources and community that allows that family then to be a good fit for that child with whatever that disability is. And to me, that's not specific to adoption, Mm-hmm.
Micah said that when they rehomed Huxley, that they found someone that would ultimately be the best fit and that he is thriving. He is really happy and doing really well, and that his new mommy has medical professional training and that it is a very good fit. Do you think that they could have sort of made themselves like a better fit or with this sort of training, and like what sort of training specifically would you kind of recommend in this case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, first disclaimer, I hope that Huxley is with a family that's a really good fit. I mean, that's like my ultimate hope for him in this whole process. What I do as an adoption professional, especially in my clinical work, is try to help families become that best fit for that child. And my message always is that that's what it means to be a good parent. I mean, I think before you have kids, no matter how they enter your family, you might have some ideas for how you're going to parent them and what kind of parent you're going to be. And once you become a parent, I think you start to realize that kids need different things from their parent. They need their parent to become a good fit for them. Yes, there's things you can do to shape your child, but a lot of parenting is shaping yourself so that you can be a good fit for that child. And it's not always, sometimes you have to be the kind of parent that you didn't necessarily envision yourself being, and giving up that past vision of what kind of parent you thought you might be able to be. That's part of what it means to be a good parent. So that's a lot of what my clinical work is providing that training, providing that support. It's hard to give up those ideas of the, vision of parenting that you want it to be. And I think in Micah's case, especially, she probably had a specific mold of a type of parent that she wanted to be based on her, based on the mommy blogger sort of vision for what it means to be a good parent. And I think that she probably realized that that wasn't maybe what Huxley needed. Mm-hmm.
If a family is not adequately prepared pre-adoption, what are some resources that allows them to recover post-adoption?
Yeah, there's so much out there. And that's really the message that I want to convey. There's so much for parents that are out there. One spot that I would highly recommend is the Center for Adoption Support and Education. The acronym for that is CASE. They are based on the East Coast of the US, but have national resources, webinars, books, a whole host of articles on their website that really would be a good place for people to start and stay engaged. And then there are often local resources available for families. So like in our area in Michigan, there's the Post-Adoptive Resource Center, or PARC, and they divide our state up in regions and have both social opportunities as well as support and training for families and for adoptees. So there are a lot of ways, a lot of communities to reach out to. In terms of book recommendations, on my website, which is emilyhelder.com, I have a list of books that I often recommend for different situations. And I have a video there that talks through those different resources and kind of who they're designed for. So I just really want to encourage anybody who's watching, who's, who may be struggling, that there's a lot of resources out there to address a variety of challenges. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I saw in Micah's case is, in one of her videos, she said, "I wish there was a manual for autism and for adoption trauma." And really, I'm hoping through this video that people are seeing that indeed there are those manuals out there, there are those trainings. So it's really a matter of seeking them out, of accessing them. There's support available for families. So yeah, thanks for this discussion. In our next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about how the Stauffers might have looked at Huxley's behavior and maybe misinterpreted aspects of it based on some adoption research that I'll discuss. So thanks.